That's how I became.
This Sober Vet.
Yo left, yo left, yo left, wow.
Our mission is to normalize sobriety with veterans who are using and abusing substances in a harmful, self-medicating way. Welcome to This Sober Vet. I am Joe Urick, and if no one told you yet today, sobriety looks good on you. I'm actually rolling solo today. Dr. T is under the weather, unfortunately, so we hope she gets better soon. And I just wanted to jump right into a fun fact about sobriety. Sobriety isn't just quitting substances. It's a transformative path to increased energy, sharper mental clarity, better sleep, improved physical appearance, financial savings, stronger relationships, and discovering new passions. With the brain repairing itself and unlocking newfound freedom from addiction's control, though it's like a lifelong journey, often involving multiple attempts and a focus on one day at a time. And this is why we're here to celebrate sobriety, especially in the world of veterans. So I'm super excited about our guest today. We have with us Anthony Dyer, who is a U.S. Air Force Special Mission Aviator with the AC-130 gunship turned writer with Moonchild as his first book. Anthony is the definition of sober and thriving. So let's dive in. Welcome, Anthony. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. Yourself, Joe? Thanks for having me, bro.
Yeah, I'm doing fantastic. It's such an honor to have you on. And I did some research on you. I'm super excited to hear about your story because it sounds very cool. So if you don't mind just starting in the beginning with the military part, what made you choose the Air Force?
Yeah, so it was basically my senior year in high school there, and I had about approximately 4 to 6 months left. And my dad gives me the typical dad talk of, it's time to get a job, go to college, or get out, right? You're about to be a man and grown man and all that. And I was all right, I'm gonna talk to the Navy first, and they were talking about being on a boat for 6 months, and then I was like, that's not for me. And talked to an Army guy, and he's like, well, we have an Air Force too. And I was like, you know what, like, I'm gonna talk to my dad about sort of the quality of life of Air Force, TDYs and golf clubs and good chow halls, right, and all that stuff that comes with that. And I was like, well, why not, and he was in way before I was. So, and that's when I decided to give it a chance and started the DEP program for about, 4 to 6 months. And then July 18th of 2000, I flew out to San Antonio.
Oh, cool. Okay. So you joined in 2000, you said?
Yeah, yes, sir. July 18th of 2000. I believe you joined in 2000 as well, if I did my homework right.
I did. Yeah, August 17th. That's so funny. Nice. Yeah, I joined in the buddy program and my buddy backed out. So
Oh, man.
I was like, okay. Yeah. So that was interesting.
Sorry.
So what happened at 9/11? Like, where were you stationed? Did you guys get deployed for anything right away?
Yeah, so I was at my first base, and I wasn't an aerial gunner or special missions aviator yet. I was what we call a weapons loader back then, and that was my first job in the Air Force. And I was at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base in the dorms, and basically a weapons loader. You load the bombs and missiles on the fighter aircraft's what I did. And I got off work about 7 or 8, something like that, mid shift, and then one of my buddies come to knock on the door. He's on my crew or whatever. He's like, "Hey, Dyer, have you seen what happened?" And I went to the day room with him, and basically like a common area, right? And there was like a tube style TV showing my age a little bit here. Maybe had 3 channels, one of those being AFN, right? And I'd seen that, the first tower was hit, and then about that time the second one came in, and I knew like, like our lives have changed in America forever, and definitely some vengeance, and I remember like loading the F-15 Strike Eagle, the next day with Noble Eagle. Like, man, if these air-to-air missiles don't come back, like, that's an airliner, right? Like, just a reality check, and so. I admired especially the firefighters and police, and I thought about the 343 firefighters ran in that day, like what's different in their DNA, right? Like, why do they do that? And about 2005, I retrained into my second job, which was fire protection, a firefighter at went to the Lewis F. Garland DoD Fire Academy there.
Cool. Okay. Nice. And did you get to see any action with that? Because when you're a firefighter, is that just any fires on post or what's your AO?
Yeah. Mostly. So I think I saw like maybe 3 structure fires the whole time I did that job, right? And there's an aircraft firefighting inside. I didn't see any of those hardly, but yeah, it's everything on bases. It's like all so fire safe, But when it does happen, yeah, I will say it's a lot of work, man. Put the wet stuff on the hot stuff, and it's a adrenaline rush, man. It's a awesome job, and I get to some of my best friendships and brotherhood in the world was in that firehouse there.
Yeah. Nice. That's awesome. And then when did you transition to the gunship? role?
So it was a 2010 is when I did the NCO court retraining program, and it was basically a long shot, of I didn't know if I was going to get it. So basically, I put in for aerial gunner first, and that's what we were called back then. And then, sure enough, there I was, doing the aircrew fundamentals there at the Medina Annex at San Antonio, Texas.
That's awesome. So, question for you. So, when you're in the ship, and what is the gun that's on the side of that? Is it a 50 cal or what is that?
So on the AC-130, the H model, we had the 40 mil Bofors cannon as well as the 105 howitzer, and the 40 mil is like basically it was a Navy anti-aircraft gun, right? And now we hung that on the side of this cargo aircraft as well as like a M1 tank cannon, right? Basically, I know like maybe 10 rounds per minute. I know it doesn't sound a lot, but you could imagine like this tank, shooting you from the sky, So
Yeah, that's wild.
yeah, the 105 it actually recoils like up to 49 inches. So just to show a little bit how much force you're giving the structure of that aircraft.
That's what I was going to ask. So, when you're firing that, is your aircraft like literally shifting in the air?
Yeah, I forgot what the exact number is, but I believe it's like, roughly like 10 degrees right here in this, what we call the pylon turn to orbit. And, the gun goes
Wow.
boom, and you're out a little bit further each time. And, you got the pilot up there meeting what we call rate and coincidence and all this math, and stuff that I didn't have to worry about. But yeah, it was, seeing that thing go off was an awesome experience.
I'm sure, dude. That's really cool. Talk about a freedom boner.
Yeah.
All right. So, any deployments though? Did you get to see anything overseas, or
Yeah,
do you
I
mind
did.
talking about that?
Yeah, no problem. So I did 9 or 10, double digit deployments there at Bagram. And back then it was like 90 days on, 90 days off, and it was all about your flight hours. And as a flyer, there was this thing you could reach 330 flight hours in 90 days, and if you went over that, they'd have to sit you down, right? But yeah, we had our ways of managing that, and then I went to Kuwait when the ISIS conflict first started. I believe it was 2015 was my trip out there. And then I went to the rescue helicopters for about 4 years in Moody Air Force Base in the 41st Rescue Squadron, the Pave Hawks, and
Oh wow.
went to East Africa twice in that. And then came back to gunships for my sunset tour here at Cannon Air Force Base. And here I am, man, doing podcasts and somehow an author.
Nice. So now let's back up. So what was your addiction of choice, and when did that begin?
Yeah, definitely alcoholism. And it was, it started out real gradual, so let's say, for example, flying, right? Like you'd go to a debrief and often, you'd land, there'd be 12 packs sitting on your desk right there, or the table, right? And, weekend parties, a pint, something like that. And then, my last year, it really, a couple years, it developed into like a pint a night, you know what I mean? And just mixing that with sleeping medicine and all that stuff, terrible, physically, terrible spiritually and mentally is the worst I ever felt.
Yeah, I could definitely relate to that. Now, this all happened when you're in, so you really weren't drinking much prior?
Yeah, when I was in high school, man, I'd maybe had like 3 beers, and all that stuff. And even, I would drink every now and then. It was my other jobs as a firefighter and all that. And but nothing like this, like the last couple years where it really really escalated.
Yeah, I totally relate. So, did you have a aha moment, or kind of like what other people might call rock bottom, or did something like major happen where you had to go, whoa, I got to stop?
Yeah, and this is sort of honestly how the book came to be. So I went to my last appointment was on my 20th anniversary, July 18th of 2020, and it was real slow, and I got back and and I realized that the end was near. I'm getting ready to retire, right? Like, we didn't shoot at all in that last deployment. If we did, maybe once, but your whole reason for being a gunship guy is to make sure the guys on the ground get home. Whether it's the SEALs, the Green Berets, etc. Like you're there for them, and just that sense of relevance was gone. Identity was gone, and and I got back and started that a pint a night, to go to sleep. And my wife gives me the ultimatum: it's time to either get help. It's either the bottle or me and your daughter. And by the grace of God, thank you so much. I chose my family. So
Wow. You and I relate in that sense as well, because my wife had the intestinal fortitude to do the same. And that's something that the more I've been doing this, it's almost disheartening because I see a lot of mainly wives approaching me and saying, like, my husband is like out of control. I don't know what to do. And then I always tell them, like, listen, what worked for me is scary, but you gotta like hit him with a dose of reality and kind of give him the ultimatum. And so many wives are like, I don't want to do that because I'm afraid he'll leave me. And it's kinda like, "Oh, like, what do you."
yeah, it's a which that led to the there was this thing called the preservation of the force of family, and like USOCOM, and all the units have it, and it's basically you get like a physical therapist, and there's usually a mental health person there, and mine went to like this civilian like USOCOM psychiatrist, and she had me do prolonged exposure at first, and basically the idea of that is like you're getting comfortable being uncomfortable. You start out writing your story, you get to the root cause of your trauma or what's causing the problem, right? And you get to the point where you basically talk about it just like we're doing now, right? Discussing it. And when I first told the psychiatrist story, I cried. Heck, she cried at one point. But yeah, it's a journey. It's a marathon and not a sprint. And I know that now.
Attention veteran entrepreneurs, we've got a special announcement just for you. Marathon Business Advisory Services is proud to present a unique opportunity, a J-Dog franchise, veteran-owned and ready for its next chapter. Whether you're looking to own your first business or grow through acquisition, this could be the perfect fit. And the best part, it's completely confidential, with no cost and no obligation to explore the opportunity. Just reach out to Jay Calandra at j.calandra@marathonbas.com to learn more. Support veteran success. Build your future. Let Marathon guide the way. And it's tough too, because especially when you're I don't know if you heard my story, but when I was stationed at Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas, where you only had to be 18 to drink. So I was like just going nuts. And it really brought my brothers and sisters and I closer, because on the weekends, dude, we would get crazy, but we would have so much fun. And I don't know, to me at the time, I didn't see it as a problem, because it was the ultimate, the bonding, and it just whenever we would have a field exercise and we would get back and then we would drink and something would happen and we would drink, it just, to me, it was so embedded in the culture that I didn't realize, I kind of knew I was drinking too much, because I would always be the last one to wait, because I didn't want people drawing stuff on me, and you know how we haze each other. So my goal was always I would puke and rally. I would do whatever it took to make sure I was the last one up. But then when I got out and I started drinking around civilians, that literally is when I was like, damn, maybe I do have a problem, because people are looking at me like, bro, you just polish off that whole bottle of Southern Comfort. Are you okay? I'm like, yeah, why? I'm like, I'm ready to go. That's
Yeah, and I was always a lightweight too, and that was another thing. There's the lies I would tell myself, right? Like, okay, I can't be an alcoholic because I can deploy 3 months and be sober for 3 or 4 months, come back and drink. In my mind, that wasn't the definition of a drinking problem, right? Or, and basically well, I only drink on the weekends, but it's only a pint, and then a pint turns, for me, that was a lot. It's a lightweight and all that, but yeah, it was a realization, man. And there is a spiritual side to healing. I'll say that, because it's not an instant thing. I tried, cold turkey and all that, right? And man, it was so hard. And I think we're very all or nothing type men and women in the service, right? And these uncommon jobs, and like I say, we're very normal people doing very uncommon things, and so it's not if it happens, it's often when, right? And then there was I realized that later after I was out too, especially I was on the meds, all the stuff like that, and I was like, man, I've turned to everyone but Jesus, right? Everything but Jesus. And he let me know that in a very spiritual way. And I will say, if you make a promise, that promise to God, honor it, because it's scary when you break it. I'll say that.
absolutely. I agree. So when your wife gave you the ultimatum, you literally quit that day, or what was the process after that conversation?
No, so it was, I did, I slowed down. I'll say that at first. And then, this goes on, and, a drink or two here and there. And then there was February 28th of 21, which was on a Sunday. And that's when I said that prayer, right? And I realized that, I turned to everything but Jesus. And, and that's when there was an accountability thing there with me with that. And there's a 2-year time frame where I'd fell off the wagon twice. And, like I said, I'd let at that point, myself, my family down, and, God, right? And that's what I'm getting at, is when you break that promise, it's be careful, because what comes with that, so.
That's such a good point. Now, can you kind of tell our listeners what was going on in your head when you fell off the wagon, and kind of let people down in order to get back on track? Because a lot of people, once they fail, they just continue to fail and go, oh, well, I've already messed up, I might as well keep going. So what made you go, all right, this was just a little hiccup, let's move forward in this direction?
So I think it was the fact that realizing that I can't do this on my own, right? You need some sort of support network, no matter what that is. And it starts out as a lie to yourself, right? I'm often telling people that the two wolves theory, right? Like, there's you have good intentions wolf, and then you have a bad one, right? And the one that wins is the one you feed the most. So you gotta feed yourself these positive thoughts and say, like, you know what, like I don't need this in my life anymore. It stole so much from me, right? And it started off like, well, I can have two or three, right? I can be social. And for me, it was never that. It was like blasted at that point, right? And the two times that happened, man, I felt like just like shit, man, just a letdown, just the guilt and the shakes that come with that stuff. And it was so bad. And you don't want to get back you don't want to get back off that wagon once you fell off of it. I'll say that.
Yeah, yeah. Now, one thing you said that is so important that everyone really needs to take into consideration is support. I've never met anyone strong enough to do this by themselves, dude. Sobriety is tough. So
100%.
support is huge. Religion, therapists, AA, whatever it may be, that's huge. So besides religion, what other support did you kind of lean on?
Definitely my family, like, them holding me accountable, right? Like, hey, you said you weren't gonna do this anymore, but you did, and that was devastating for a man to hear, right? And, you're especially talking to your daughter and stuff. But yeah, it was definitely accountability with my family and accountability with myself, like that man in the mirror discussion you have every night. Like, I'm gonna wake up the next morning, like I'm either gonna drink alcohol and fail, or I'm gonna make that commitment to myself and family every day and to God that I'm not gonna take a sip.
Yes, amen, amen. Now, how many kids do you have?
So I have one daughter, she's a 9 years old.
Cool. Okay. That's fun. Yeah. And that is tough because, like, I'm a father too. I'm a business owner. I'm what many would call just a very high functioning alcoholic. And that's one thing that crushed me, dude. When I was in the depths of it, my ego was like so pronounced and out here that anytime anyone would bring it up, I'd be like, dude, like I've never had a DUI. I've never missed a day of work. I always make sure all my stuff is done first. Like I was a responsible alcoholic, if that makes sense. But yeah, because I put everything first, then I'm like, I deserve this. To me, this was my carrot at the end of the stick. Like I work hard, I bust my ass all week. I deserve to sit down and drink this. I deserve to do that. And it wasn't until I got a therapist. Like after my wife gave me the ultimatum, I quit cold turkey. I felt so alone and just off in every sense of the words. And then when I started, I was with this male therapist who he was addicted to heavy drugs and alcohol for like 15 years. And he was 15 years sober when I was talking to him. And just hearing him kind of guide me and kind of strip away the layers, be like, look, well, why do you need that buzz? Why do you feel that you're only working hard to take something that literally is destroying your body? It's a poison, and that's your ultimate goal. Like, just think about that doesn't make sense. And I'm like, damn, like I kind of look back and I was like, that is kind of dumb. And then being sober, you realize that all these little wins equal massive wins because you can make it through a bad day without drinking, tomorrow's going to come. You can make it through a good day without drinking, tomorrow's going to come. No matter what happens, as long as you make it to your pillow at night, tomorrow's going to come. And me personally, I'm a little over 3.5 years sober. I've been 3.5 years waking up without a hangover, waking up without regret. Like I love this side of sobriety. That's why I started this podcast, just to be able to tell people how beautiful it is on this side. So what would you say are your like top takeaways of sobriety?
I say you're gonna have to replace that habit with something, and I can't believe I haven't mentioned this yet, but like part of the writing process was like, when that urge comes in that middle of the night, right? Like you can have a few or whatever you tell yourself, right? Like I'm going to pick up that pen instead of that bottle, and somehow now got a book out, right? And I say replace it with something that you're passionate about, and realizing, like you said, that it is a poison. You're going to feel like shit. I would wake up, man, from these nights, and if I went out, right, or something like that, I'd be like, okay, two questions. Who do I owe money and who do I need to apologize to?
Exactly. Yep.
And I hated the apology part, and years later, I'm still, calling people every night, like, hey man, I'm sorry about that night. I did this and that. And that's a very humbling moment, right? So just remember those two things and it'll help you.
Are you enjoying these stories of veterans totally rocking it with sobriety? Here at This Sober Vet podcast, we want to keep bringing these warriors' tales of triumphs to you. However, we need your help to make that happen. We're in need of sponsors for this Sober Vet podcast. That's right, now's the time to show your support, advertise your brand, or just make a monetary donation. It's easy. Just go to our website, www.thissobervet.com. To become a sponsor, fill out the form on our contact page. To donate, just click on Support the Mission. Let's keep shining a light for those still in the dark.
Absolutely. So yeah, let's start with your book. So what kind of gave you the idea to write a book?
Yeah, so I was in that prolonged therapy, those sessions, and the lady, the psychiatrist, told me, it must have been 100 times, you should tell your story. I was like, no, like, I'm not going to tell it. Nobody wants to hear this. And then when I got out, I realized when the dust settles, like, maybe I can't pay it forward. Maybe if this book, if one person gets help from it, that's a blessing, right, at that point. And so, yeah, I decided to put at least what I thought was enough for a story. Then I reached out to a war journalist, and she basically, I was on LinkedIn and like looked up, story or editors for military stories. She messaged me right away. Next thing you know, I had an appointment, and then she recommended a publisher, which did the hardware, awesome job with the cover of the book and stuff. And, I'd say pen to paper to book in hand about 7 months or so, which is relatively fast.
Really?
Yeah.
That
But I
is.
had, the advantage I had though was these dark, these thoughts, right? That I'd, been writing out for years. I finally put them in some sort of chronological order and then my life and all that stuff. So
Dude, that's very cool. Good for you.
thanks,
So
brother.
did you start with like an outline of points you wanted to hit and then you expanded on them, or did you just start writing and kind of see where it went?
Yeah, a lot of it was like Eminem style, like, my nightstand have a note and pad or whatever. I had a napkin and, basically throw it on there and then wake up in the morning and try to make sense with this Charlotte's Web of emotional words, right? And like try to make sense of 2 decades of war and these uncommon things that we'd all seen, right? And just try to make sense of it all. And then, when I talked to the editor, she was really good. She had like a Word document where I would have to elaborate on, or what did you mean by this and that? She did a really good job of like helping me say the loud part out loud, right? And forever thankful for that. So
Nice, nice. Now, I have not yet read the book, but I do plan on getting one. How raw and honest were you about alcohol in your story? Did you sugarcoat that at all, or was that like real?
it was real. I talk about the moment with my wife there and the ultimatum. That's the big part of it. I talk about drinking to try to die, man. Like that's how personal I get with it. Which it's a terrible. If you've ever had that thought, right? You think about that. Drink. You're killing yourself drinking, but you do it anyway, right? Like I get into some of that in there, and it was a hard thing to face. It's still a hard thing to face, man.
That is tough. That is tough. But I'm glad you're being real, because then not only does it let other people know that they're not alone in it, but it shows that there is another side to it, you know? So
Yeah.
that's good for you for doing that.
Thanks,
Now,
brother.
I was reading an interview where someone asked you something, and I thought this was cool, and I want you to elaborate on it. So, in an interview, when asked if you had a decade to live, you said that you would live with ruthless intention. That's free. I love that. That live with ruthless intention. Like that is such a good goal to have. So, can you explain what made you think of that and a couple things that you do to live by that?
Yeah. So I would say that there's this quote that there's no U-Haul behind a hearse, right? And I talk about in the book about like the only thing when we die we can really leave is how people remember us as. So I would have an everyday bucket list where like I talk about living the house money life, like taking chances, and just take that chance. If there's a place you want to go see. If there's something you want to do it. Set goals and check off that checklist. And that's what I mean. Like be deliberate, set goals, and achieve those goals.
That's a good point, because then when you're on your deathbed, you could look back and go, wow, like I really did everything I wanted to. There'd be no regret when living like that.
Yeah, I watched that show House of Dragon. I put this quote in the book there. One of the guys in there is like, "What is this brief mortal life if not the pursuit of legacy?" Right. So, my grandfather asked me once, like, "Do you remember your great 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 grandfather's name?" I was like, "I don't, man, honestly." And basically, the point he was getting at is that's all you can leave behind is a legacy, and it's either gonna be good or bad. I can either say I
Right.
drank myself to death, or I could say made a difference. Right.
Exactly. Exactly. So, how was the transition for you when you retired back into the civilian world?
It's very hard. It's still very hard. Like when you're filling out that to get your DD-214, this personnelist type office, right? And I realized you can walk in there, but when you walk out, there's no door handle, no door knob on the other side, so you can't get back in, And so I had to sort of, to this day, like get over myself and realize this machine keeps going. But what you can always still pay it forward and help a veteran out, right? That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one thing, no, I didn't go in until I retired. I only did 4 years and I got out. I could only imagine being in for that long and just so used to the structure of the military that once you get out, did you almost feel like naked and not as respected as when you were in? And if you did, like, what are some ways to kind of cope with that and not let that bring you back into drinking or doing something dumb?
Yeah, you definitely feel like that loss of identity. That people to this day they email me, text me, guys I flew with, right, and men and women. That's a very common thing, and I think the way around it is be like, okay, you know what, we did our time, and now it's this generation's turn to to fight our nation's wars, and like I said, I had to get over myself and realize this machine keeps going, but there's still jobs out there you can do. Like I do the flight simulator stuff now, and I still get to see some of the men and women I used to fly with and create scenarios for them. And so there's always to be in the game still a little, but you have to realize that we did our part right.
Nice. That's good. That's awesome. Now that you're out and you're with your family full time, was that also pretty difficult?
I realize that's my new mission now is finding those exciting moments in the calm, right? Being the best dad I could be, being the best husband I could be, being the best friend or airman or wingman or battle buddy, whatever you want to call it to someone. That's what matters now to me. So I'm glad I've realized that now. At first I didn't realize that.
Yeah, that's good. What kind of, besides writing, are there other hobbies that you do? Because one thing I noticed when I quit drinking, I was like, damn, I have a lot of free time on my hands because I used to drink a lot. So, yeah. So, what do you do now to kind of fill that void?
Yeah, so I love basketball and I love fishing. I usually go when I go back home to North Carolina in the mountains. Me and my dad will go hit up the river, trout fishing and
Cool.
stuff like that, and just fun moments with my family traveling.
And isn't it nice too? Another thing that I appreciate about sobriety is simply being present, like remembering what happened the night before, and also the accountability. Your daughter is still young, but like my boys are both grown, and like to know if my son's done a dance at 8:30, that dad's going to be there at 8:30. He's not going to be still at the bar, like lost track of time. Like it's so empowering to finally be, in my opinion, the definition of a man because I'm not choosing any substance over the ones I love. Again, I'm being present, accountable for, I'm being the man that I want my children to be. And that's the one thing that I try when I talk to people who are still in the addiction. I always say, just listen, like, you know what the addiction gets you because you're on that path right now. Don't you want to be on this side? Like, don't you want to give this a try? If someone's listening right now that is in their addiction, they've recently separated from the military, they can't put down that bottle. What advice would you give them to kind of show how good it is on your side and what they could do to get there?
That's a very good way you put it, being present in the moment, right? Like I saw this quote, and I'm gonna tie it together here in a second. But basically, it's like the only people that remember you work 60 hours a week would be your kids, and then when about 30 years from now, right? And the only people that's truly going to remember how bad an alcoholic you were would be your family. So I would say take advantage, love those moments, cherish those moments, and create those moments. Before anything, you got your family.
Family is everything. That's one thing that kind of broke my heart. So I had my wife on episode 10 just to tell my story through her eyes. And one thing she said was she honestly didn't think I was going to choose her. She thought I was going to choose the alcohol. And dude, like, there's nights where I lose sleep over that, just
Yeah.
knowing that this woman who decided to take my last name, we built this beautiful family together, was concerned I would choose a liquid over our love and foundation. Like, and talk about emasculating, dude. That made me feel like like this big, like that's tough.
Yeah, that's a very powerful moment there for you, man. I could, I've never looked at it that way, but yeah, I have like looked at it like it stole so much from me, right? And like these are moments I can never get back. I look at it like that, it's that same sort of thought there with you. But yeah, that's a very powerful way to put that.
And I feel like the more I'm detached from it, the more I realize that alcohol is such a lie. Like what it sells you is like, oh, it makes you feel good. It's a social interaction thing. Like just have a drink. Oh, you had a bad day. Here's a drink. Like just everything about it compounds like bad stuff, like every decision I made while drinking, all the money I wasted while drinking, the horrible foods I ate while drinking, like just everything about it is so bad, but we're just so conditioned that it's the norm, and that's what we do as soldiers and airmen and stuff. And And it's funny too, because like I'm not against anything. Like, because I've had people come up like, dude, like, well, you want the world to stop drinking because you did? I'm like, no, not at all. Like, this is for the people that had negative effects from these substances. If you can do edibles and you're living a responsible life, go for it, brother. If you can have a drink on Friday and 2 drinks next Friday, I couldn't do that. Once I started drinking, it'd be impossible for me to stop. So like I always tell people like, listen, I'm not against anything. Our mission is for people like us who it just has negative repercussions once we start doing whatever substance is.
Yeah, and I've been out with friends, and they'll ask the question, right? Like same sort of thing. Like, why don't you have a couple? And I call it the bug. Like my mom's Scott Irish, and Appalachia. I'm probably from the moonshine capital of the world, right? So like, it's always the thought of it's always been there, and like I realize that some people can handle it, and they can be determined enough, and what's the word I'm looking for? Disciplined enough to have 2 or 3. Me, I don't have that in my blood.
Right.
It's a pint or more or nothing. So
Yep. Yep. That's why the only thing I need to control is that first drink. As long as I
yeah,
never have one, I'm good to go.
yeah, 100%.
In the beginning, one thing that I struggled with, again, going back to that carrot dangling at the end of the rope, is like, now that I'm not drinking, what am I looking forward to at the end of the week? And that was very difficult for me because I'm like, it was so easy to choose the negative path and go, man, like, I can't even drink. Like, I don't even want to do this because now I can't do that. And like the first couple months, it was hard for me to be positive in that sense, as opposed to the woe is me, I can't drink and blah, blah, blah. But now that I am positive, everything is all good. What were some tools that you used in the beginning to kind of, if a craving did come up, to kind of suppress that and move forward?
And I would go back to those moments of, have you ever woke up with like the shakes, like that level of like from a hangover, like just remind myself of those moments, or throwing up, and the moments where I talk about like the 2 questions, like who do I need to apologize to, or who do I owe money? Like just, what did I do last night? Did I drunk text somebody? That's a very scary feeling, man. And I just reminded myself of those moments as a caution,
Yeah, dude, that's a great point. Throwing up is the worst feeling in the
Oh man,
world.
yeah.
Oh, dude. And I do not miss throwing up one bit. And yeah, like you said, waking up in the morning and checking your phone, and you're like, holy crap,
Yeah.
like you're reading it like it's for the first time. And yeah, that's a scary
It's
thing too.
terrifying, bro.
That's crazy. I'm so glad. Well, number one, I'm very proud of you for being on the sober path. So definitely keep fighting the good fight. Now, how long have you been sober? I don't know if I
So
asked.
there was the one day, the 21 February 28th, and then there was 2 times where I fell off the wagon in a 2-year period there. And I don't remember those dates. I do my best to forget those 2 times, but I
Yeah, yeah.
definitely remind myself that I let some people down when I did that, and it motivates me now to never break that promise again.
That's good. Yeah. So you're using that as a tool of positivity. So that's
Yeah,
awesome. Good.
yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Very
But
nice.
sometime in 2023.
Okay. Good. 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 Awesome. So what's next for you? Do you have another book idea, or what do you have? What are your goals moving forward?
Yeah, I'm at the final stages trying to get the second book out, and then I'm trying to create an app, basically like a nonprofit, where it's gonna be called The Debrief, where you have this app on your phone, and the veteran or first responder can basically speak into this thing, and like with AI, like companion type thing, it'll soft edit, and then through the nonprofit, the veteran or first responder could get it like edited and published for, if not free, then like really cheap type thing. Because I think these stories are important that we tell them, and we had lost a lot of brothers and sisters over there, and I think we should do it to honor them as well. Those memories die in the sand, so that way they can live on as well.
Dude, that sounds awesome. What's that app going to be called?
It's going to be called the Debrief.
The Debrief. Okay,
Yes,
cool.
sir. Yeah.
That's very cool. That's a great idea. I like that.
Thanks,
Nice.
brother.
Now, when do you think that'll be out? Within the next year?
So I just got the name of it approved with like the state of New Mexico and all that, but yeah, I would say within a year. Like I need basically get some heavy. I'm not a tech guy and stuff like that. Some IT type, to help me out with stuff like that. And then
Dude, when
it'll
that
be
comes out, let me know.
100%. Yeah, and it'll be largely relying on like donors and donations and stuff like that.
Is there anything else that we haven't gone over that you would like to bring up?
I just thought I always like to leave with a positive thought. Like when you're going through it, man, whatever the trial is, like alcohol and drugs is not the answer, but just remember an aircraft takes off against the wind and not with it. That's what Henry Ford says. My name is Anthony Dyer, and that's how I became this sober vet.
Recovery thrives on connection. Like, subscribe, and follow this Sober Vet podcast
so more veterans can hear the message that change is possible.